In an organization like Titan Group, where the workforce follows a distributed model, while some people are working in different retail offices, some are working from offices, some are working from home. So, what are the current challenges that you're experiencing in creating and executing learning and skilling journeys for this kind of a distributed workforce, GD?
So Yasmin, let me begin by saying that we are at an inflection point in how learning happens. And at Titan, we are trying to find the right balance between online, virtual classroom, and in-person learning. While during the last 2 years, there's been a significant uptake in online and virtual media. At the same time, we're also witnessing a very high level of fatigue with these learning modes in our employee segments. Employees are also missing the in-person connect and camaraderie that they built with the facilitators and fellow participants. Our second challenge is making learning relevant for each individual. So while calendar and competency-based programs, which many of us invested in the last couple of decades, are still relevant, we constantly strive towards considering every employee as a unique individual for whom we want to make sure that we empower them at customizing their personal learning journey. The third point is really about contextualization of learning. We've gone through this era of large-scale concept-based learning, and I believe that that is behind us. We are now shifted into an age of contextualized learning where the context of the organization and the individual's role is as critical as the concept and needs to be embedded in the learning plan. And finally, the evergreen topic of application of learning, which requires a shift in how learning is designed. These are the top few challenges that I would call out.
Thanks for sharing that, Didi. I think I totally agree with you. We've been talking to a lot of learning leaders, and this is a common challenge. How do you make learning more personalized? How do you align the goals of the individual with the goals of the business? How do you make it relevant? There's an overload of content at times. There are so many platforms, so much of technology available. And finally, how do you, while you can implement learning initiatives, how do you help people adopt that? How do you create that learning culture? So I think that's relevant since the L&D landscape is evolving so majorly in the past few years. Specifically, skills are changing, job roles are changing. This is going to be very, very important for learning leaders to focus on, I think, going forward. So thank you so much for sharing that. Also, you have a lot of frontline talent at Titan, GD. Can you reflect also on some of the challenges you usually face while skilling this kind of talent?
I think that's an important question, Yasmin, because the way this talent learns and builds skills is somewhat different from what may happen across the rest of the organization. So I think firstly, just managing the geographical spread and making sure that there is consistency in how we build capability so that there is consistency in how we serve our customers. And it becomes even more challenging for us because we also take ownership of training of our business associate staff. So imagine over 2,000 stores across the country, and some staff in international locations as well, and being able to build capability for them in a very consistent and planned manner. The second imperative for us is really linked to language ability. Many of our learners at frontline roles learn best in their mother tongues, and this requires translation of content in multiple languages. And it can't be just a simple literal translation. It really needs to capture the essence of the message in the language that the learner understands. Many of our frontline employees had also left education for various reasons, and hence sometimes their ability and sometimes their desire to learn is very different at an individual level. And any learning that we do needs to cater to that and build energy in them and give them a reason to do that learning and build new skills. We often speak of manager investment, how invested is the manager in capability building. And managers of frontline employees are typically managers or supervisors for the first time. They've usually risen from similar roles as their team members. And getting them to convert to champions of learning is a very significant challenge. And in a distributed workforce, a lot of learning actually happens at the workplace, which the manager needs to catch and create that opportunity. We've been trying to create learning champions and enablers, learning enablers in all our stores, and that's a consistent effort that we invest in. Finally, I'd like to say that often time and access to systems, when do people learn, especially when they are in frontline jobs? How do they establish a balance between work and learning? And to enable that, we've really started to use existing forums like morning meetings, learning hours, where we can embed learning as part of things that they do on an ongoing basis rather than make learning a separate event.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. So, GD, have you seen what kind of impact are you seeing of the initiatives you have planned or you have launched for your frontline staff? And how have you been able to create a unified learning if you had to compare your other workforce, which is working out of offices or other locations, and your frontline staff? Have you made an effort to create a unified experience so at least everybody, gets equal opportunities at that level?
Sure. So Yasmin, what we've done is across all tiers of the organization, we have ensured that learning content is available and the opportunity to participate in learning exists. And actually, and this may sound surprising, if we look at the time spent on learning, it is the greatest at a frontline staff level. Usually it turns out to be the other way around. And I think a big contributor to that is our ability to have created these learning champions almost in every store. We connect with these learning champions on an ongoing basis, and they have a particular theme on which they need to build capability. So, every month we would change that theme, enable them to do that learning at the front line. And because we have those learning champions in our stores, it's like almost, one L&D professional having 20 other L&D professionals that individual has created, who then becomes champions of learning in the stores. At the same time, we've also equipped and enabled store managers to become enablers of learning in the kind of conversations that they do with their teams, in creating time and space for the team members to learn. And that we have seen from an impact perspective, we've seen that any new product or collection or process that we would launch in the past would have taken us anywhere between 30 to 60 months to ensure that learning has happened in all our frontline employees. That has now shortened to about a max of 2 weeks for anything that we do. So that's the kind of impact that this program has been able to create.
Thanks so much for sharing that. I think what resonates the most with me is, and what I've heard a lot of other leaders also talk about, is how role modeling and building learning champions plays a really, really huge role in creating that learning culture. And I think if people can learn from their peers, well, they can learn in the flow of work while they're doing their jobs. And I think the example that you said, that your frontline staff has the highest number of learners, learning hours that they've clocked in as compared to others. That's a great example of how great a job Titan is doing, is creating that kind of a culture. So thank you for sharing that, GD.
Thanks, Yasmin.
Thank you. So when we talk about the distributed workforce, and we said that people are working from different locations and shared spaces, client locations, but one thing that they have in common is a group of software, technology, connectivity tools that enables them to connect, collaborate, work together. So GD, how are you ensuring that they collaborate seamlessly when it comes to knowledge sharing and learning? You did give a few examples about learning champions and connecting with people at the stores, but how are you creating those opportunities for people to connect and ensure your employees get those quick learning lessons at the pace that they prefer?
So Yasmin, I'll respond to this in two parts. The first being the collaboration part, and the second being able to learn at their own pace and the quick learning lessons. So fortunately at Titan, we have a thriving culture of working in cross-functional teams. And this enables us to provide opportunities for capability building while people collaborate and at the same time contribute to business success. And this cuts across all our businesses and even the enabling functions like finance and HR, where people from these functions also get an opportunity to participate in those cross-functional teams at a business level. I earlier spoke of enabling learning at the workplace through learning champions. We've also started to use uh, existing forums to enable learning, like morning meetings or other existing platforms. Uh, we've also made very significant inroads in developing and leveraging internal faculty, and a very significant portion of our sessions and learning are delivered by internal faculty, including leaders and subject matter experts. The last 2 years, we've invested heavily in converting tacit knowledge, which people have in their minds and through their experience, into explicit knowledge. And we've built a very strong body of digital content, which is available to employees. And this is all generated internally. And a lot of this exchange also happens beyond Titan. We are fortunate to be part of Tata Group, and hence have the ability to leverage leaders from across the group as well. Uh, uh, Finally, on this point of collaboration, shadowing and mentoring are two other levers that we use significantly. And in fact, we developed a mentoring portal in-house through which mentors and mentees can connect with each other and collaborate on specific learning needs. On your second question on learning at people's own pace, bite-sized learning, just before the first wave of COVID had hit, we had invested in a learning experience platform. This allowed us to enable employees to choose what they want to learn, when they want to learn. It also allows employees to contribute to content, share learning with others, actually comment on their learning or comment on a piece of content that they would have consumed. Employees can also follow others both within and outside the organization. And this is supported by both internal content through other partners, as well as content from open source. So that kind of allows us to collaborate as well as learn at our own pace with, both bite-sized modules as well as learning journeys, which are broken up into smaller modules being available. And in parts of the organization that work on fixed schedules, we also encourage managers to slot dedicated time for learning for their team members. So all this has really enabled us to collaborate as well as make learning available to an individual at a time that they would prefer.
Great, thanks. Thanks for sharing that, GD. I do agree that technology has really enabled and empowered L&D leaders to create those learning and skilling journeys that impact the workforce, no matter at what level they are at or where they're working from or what are their learning preferences. So that's a very great point that you shared. We saw that since COVID-19, and you also pointed out how you actually, invested in an LXP platform, digital learning became a huge thing, especially during those times. So how are you leveraging digital learning in the flow of jobs, and what features do you see in digital learning that can amplify learning impact and experience? And especially for your frontline workers, GD, because they might not always have access to digital tools, right? Because they're working most of the times. How do you kind of bring together digital learning and frontline workers together to create that kind of a learning journey?
Great question, Yasmin. And while I earlier spoke of the learning experience platform, we are now also implementing a talent marketplace, which takes that experience further and gives access to an individual to career planning, to skill development, all at the click of a few buttons. Mm-hmm. They can also connect with other individuals who've been through that career journey, internal subject matter experts, and chalk out their own career path and learning journeys. The challenge, especially for frontline employees that you said, was really access to that technology. And to take a very simple example, while we have great content, a learning management system, and a learning experience platform, the way people can access that, let's say in a store, is through a system, a laptop or a desktop. And that is always in limited supply in any frontline environment. The other means that they can use to learn is really mobile-enabled learning. And hence that becomes for us a very crucial feature, especially for capability building in frontline employees. The other piece really is design of learning journeys and content, which is really bite-sized because like I said earlier, the balance between work and learning and being able to maintain that is crucial. So what I would look for in a platform that enables this digital learning is really the ease of use and how well the platform empowers the user. So the learner should be able to log in quickly in one step, navigate the platform easily, find relevant learning resources with just a few clicks, and stay engaged in that process. A seamless experience across devices, because some of our learners do shift devices while they're learning. Being able to personalize learning journeys, automate content in a way that it gets pushed rather than the user having to search for content. It gets pushed to the user based on the user's learning objectives. And hence, when the content becomes relative to me, I'm more open to coming, and I'm energized in coming back to that platform for learning. And that links to the AI and analytics capabilities that the platform offers. The ability or already existing partnerships and integration with leading content providers, and the ability to support user-generated content and social learning. So these are things that I believe become important, especially also when it is distributed learning.
Great, thanks. Thanks for sharing that, Didi. Another question that I have is about how do you measure the impact? You said that ease of use is very important for your learning journeys, because you have put together all the resources, the technology, relevant courses. You're giving that people that hyper personalized option, learning journeys that they can pick and choose from and where and what they want to learn. How about the impact, and have you seen any change, any difference in the kind of learning impact you've seen in the past few years compared to today and a few years ago?
The shift that we've seen is one of the things that I mentioned earlier, from content to context. So wherever context is leading the learning journey, we've seen that effectiveness shifts. And what do I really mean by context? See, in the past, a lot of our programs were built around a concept saying, and I'll take a simple concept around prioritization, like urgent versus important or effort versus impact. And then, we would use, a caselet or get people to practice it using a hypothetical situation. We've now completely shifted to making it very real by actually connecting with learners beforehand and picking up situations that they actually face on a day-to-day basis. And hence that context comes first, and the content is supporting the context. So I think where we've been able to do that, the impact is clearly very significant as compared to the past. One downfall or one challenge with digital learning means is that it becomes difficult for us to get the learner to practice that learning, either in a simulated environment or in a real context on machine, or actually in a store while engaging with a customer, because that learning is now happening digitally. And how do we make that digital experience as rich as an in-person learning experience? So what we've started shifting to is blended learning journeys, where there is your digital part of the learning, which is simply making you familiar with the concepts, and possibly some application of that concept has gone digital. But then we bring the learner back into an in-person learning session, could be virtual or could be in a classroom or actually at their work location. And that's where we build in the context and make that learning alive in the context of the learner's job. So blended learning journeys, and then towards the end of that blended learning journey is an assignment which the learner completes, which is the implementation of learning, and comes back and talks to that learning group about what they learned, how they've implemented it, what success have they met with, what challenges did they face. And that really starts to complete the learning circle for the individual.
Great. Thanks. Thanks for sharing that, GD. I think that makes a lot of sense. And organizations who are working in a distributed work model, I think this is the kind of example they can see and learn from and implement in their own learning journey strategies, because this is what will work. Your learning can be digital, your learning can be physical, but the blended model, as you very rightly said, actually works better when you are dealing with frontline staff and trying to create a unified learning experience for them. So thanks for sharing that. Coming to the concluding question for this video interview, GD, the role of L&D professionals has evolved immensely in the past few years. So what do you think are some skills that they should upskill themselves on? And what is your priority for your L&D team when it comes to their skilling journey?
This is one of my favorite topics to talk about, Yasmin. So let me call out my list of the top 4 capabilities that I encourage all L&D professionals to build. Firstly, I see the L&D professional as a consultant, and hence consulting skills remains as my number 1, on my capability list. This requires an understanding of systems thinking, the ability to understand the business context, speak the business language, bringing in functional depth, and being a trusted advisor. Second on my list is the ability to be a powerful facilitator. So powerful facilitation is the second skill that I would like to call out. And this is really not about standing up and training or teaching a concept. It's more about being able to structure a group engagement, lead the group through a process that enables them to reach their objectives, being able to encourage surfacing of different points of view, constructive debate, facilitating and resolving conflict, and keeping the group on course to the objectives that the group set out to achieve. So that's powerful facilitation for me. Third on my list is deep knowledge and experience in the area of organizational development and systems thinking, because that really builds the breadth and the repertoire of functional expertise that the L&D professional is bringing in. And finally, and this is a new entrant on the list in the last couple of years for me, which is building comfort with all forms of digital learning, right from the design stage to the delivery stage, and the implementation stage. So those would be my top 4 recommendations for L&D professionals.